You're here on Geeks Out with Tamsin and Clayton, and we have the opportunity to interview Natalie Erika James. She's a Melbourne filmmaker who jumped to the world's attention with her release of the 2020 film Relic before being handed the reins of Rosemary Baby's prequel Apartment 7A. The filmmaker is back with her new movie, Saccharine, a haunted body horror which gives us the queasy feeling you might get from too much sugar. Natalie Erika James, welcome to Geeks Out.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll just go, it is saccharine, so...
So I'm dyslexic and I love to throw in extra vowels all the time.
It comes a lot, actually, and there was a discussion about changing the title because maybe people wouldn't be able to pronounce it. So, but I'm glad we kept it because I think it just embodies the film, yeah.
And it is. I even practiced it beforehand. So saccharine, we will go with that. And I mean,
saccharine, that's still saccharine.
Oh my god,
that's why Clayton's here.
It's always a good start of interview when you misname the film. It's a great way to start.
Exactly. I will put my hand up for that every time. And I guess the best thing to start with is what drew you to filmmaking?
Oh, yeah, great question. I think I was always very much a child who, was looking for ways to connect with the world because I grew up moving around a lot and, changing schools every couple of years. And films really appealed to me as a way to, again, connect with like a wider world and to see myself reflected in films, I think was like the biggest appeal. And I started kind of making these very angsty, very wanky short films as a teenager, and it kind of grew from there. Yeah.
I love that.
Nice. With Relic, we have a rural setting, bringing broad feelings of isolation. Saccharine twists around and gives us a very urban setting, giving Hannah very little room to escape. How did the two different settings impact your filmmaking?
Yeah, that's a great question because I guess, with horror having such tropes around location, you're always looking at, what kind of framework am I building? But as you hit on, we really wanted this idea of an urban city that was kind of ambiguous. We did shoot it in Melbourne, but we wanted it to feel a little bit anonymous. And this idea of compression, right, and containment, and that, she's kind of hemmed in by not just her ideas about herself and her body, but also the buildings and the spaces that she inhabits as well. So yeah, it definitely affects so much of the visual language when you decide to set a story in a location. And it just felt like the perfect fit for a uni student, to be kind of so pinned by that environment.
It's amazing. Yeah, definitely got that feel. I've been on a weight loss journey, so I related to this a lot. And the one thing that hit me the hardest, especially in this movie, and has made me think about my journey, was that it wasn't the wanting to lose weight, it's that it's never actually finished. Was this something you were trying to actually explore?
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the big things for me in telling the story was just to drive home that really the physical appearance and Hannah's transformation is a very small part of what's happening. And it's really about what she's struggling with internally and the sense of shame that she carries. And that's it. There's never really an end point for that, right? And that's why we kind of use this motif of the hungry ghost, because in Buddhism, they're spirits who have an insatiable hunger, right? And like any addiction, it's kind of it's too much, but never enough, There's this kind of void that's wanting to be filled. And so much of the imagery in the film around this garbage chute and, this presence that's kind of coming for her is built around that. So
I picked up on that Hungry Ghost. There's a little reference in there, but it's definitely coming through. So was that part of your upbringing, the Hungry Ghost sort of stories and stuff?
Yeah, I think for me it was, certainly, yeah. So my mum's Japanese, and I grew up there until I was around 6 years old. So the Buddhist kind of backdrop is there. the idea of a hungry ghost is much more rooted in, I guess, Chinese mythology, but it's still there in Japan. It's just more of a side kind of story. But I liked the idea that, it was a story that Hannah's mom had kind of told her as almost like a ghost story, right? Like just as something as very like idiosyncratic to their relationship rather than something that's like a monolithic thing, but that maybe in Hannah's brain it had kind of expanded into this, projection that she's putting onto this ghost. So yeah, I mean, I definitely liked the contrast of Hannah being such a medically minded, scientifically minded kind of student, but also engaging with these, things that are outside of the world, like spirits and the sense of like ancestor worship that, is built into her relationship with her mom, essentially.
I actually, my partner's Japanese, and
Oh, cool.
he was raised Shinto, and so I
Yeah.
asked him if he knew much about hungry ghosts, and he didn't know it at all. So it's really
Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
in one
it's
country that diversity.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I just felt like it was such a great kind of parallel to the experience of addiction, right? And a great framework to build that menace, that is haunting Hannah. Yeah.
absolutely. I just thought it was an interesting parallel. So reading about your background and doing a bit of research on you, you feel like this Saccharine might be a very personal film for you. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's definitely hinted at on screen, but my parents definitely were really on the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how they related to their bodies and their relationship to food as well. So on one side, yeah, my dad really struggled with food addiction, and I think for my mom, almost in reaction to that, it was one of a lot of restraint and restriction. So, that's a very confusing environment to grow up in. And you very much absorb this messaging that it took so long for me to unpack. And part of that work has like gone into this film to really express that on screen. But, I think talking about weight is just always going to be sensitive, right? And people have so many of us have journeys with engaging with that kind of subject matter. And I kind of felt like I owed it to the audience to be as honest as possible and in putting myself on screen as much as possible because of that, because you never want to make blanket statements about how people should live their lives or anything like that. But I just felt like, even putting it on screen for someone to look at kind of brings it out of secrecy. And, I think it's that classic thing of like shame thriving in secrecy, right? So I wanted to hopefully have an audience connect with some part of that experience.
Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah. Look, and the queerness in this film is fantastic. And identifying as a queer person yourself, how different is it bringing in the queer characters to the screen?
Yeah, I was really excited to, in some ways, I think it was always inherent to the character because there's this sense of like, projecting an idealized version of herself onto Alanya and the sense of like the doubling and the doppelganger kind of notion that's built into, I guess, because her desire becomes so consumptive and all of that. So it was there from the outset, but it was really exciting to, be able to, again, in terms of like showing myself on screen, to really like fully embrace that, part of myself, because it's not something I'd done before. And I think Hannah is a character who kind of exists within spaces, there is the Japanese and the Caucasian side as well. And at its core, and, I think on screen, as a young woman, she's like still kind of coming into her own and like trying to find herself as well. So I think that it felt like a nice layer to her that, she's still trying to, I don't know, like she's existing within spaces and has a discomfort within herself that she is trying to work through. And that felt kind of reflective of my own kind of, coming to fruition in a way. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And one of the other things we really noticed, which was quite beautiful, is the queer relationship is remarkably healthy compared to everything else that's going on. Was that on purpose?
Well, there's always a consideration because, of course, the the kind of cliche is that, oh, queer relationships always end in doom and gloom, which I guess we haven't quite subverted in this film. But yeah, I really wanted a sense that there is an opportunity for something really real, and there is an opportunity for Hannah to create something with Alanya and connect with her in this very genuine way. But then, of course, her shame kind of becomes a barrier to that. And there's like a destructiveness that the shame is driving. So, yeah, I mean, I really, it was really important to me that all of her attempts to lose weight, are actually becoming obstacles for her in terms of actually finding or connecting with Alanya in the way that she wants to. And again, in the sense of Saccharine as a title, I really loved this idea of, what we project onto our objects of desire and what is the end point of that, right? And that's to fully objectify someone, and in Hannah's case, maybe render them an object in the darkest way possible. Yeah.
Does bringing so much of yourself to the screen, you've brought yourself in other ways in films before, but this is the most you've ever brought yourself to the screen in a character. Does that change your relationship to the release of the film? Does it make you more apprehensive, or does it anything to that effect?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I remember one of my producers before we embarked on making the film, she really sat me down and was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" kind of thing. There's a certain, but of course it's just everything is so heightened on screen, and it's really a starting point where you're trying to convey emotional truth, but there's so much that you've brought in from other people in your life. I certainly have never eaten anyone. So I think, yeah. And again, I think the extremeness of my upbringing, it just felt like the perfect conduit in which to tell the story. And it couldn't have been done any other way. So to a certain degree, it's harder because, you are forced to look back on certain periods of your life. And I think what I tried to convey in the film, and which is of course, a big discussion about recovery, it's not linear, often. So it's often something that you have to re-engage with in different ways, in different, times of your life. But I think it also gives you a bit of, you can kind of be a truth barometer for yourself. And when you're directing, if it affects you in a certain way, you kind of go, yeah, you've hit on something that might actually help someone else. Yeah.
So in the film, men have a very minimal presence. Was that a very intentional choice?
Yes and no. I think I think I'm just more drawn to stories about women, and clearly in Relic it was kind of the same thing. I think again in Relic there was a sense of it's mother, daughter, grandmother, but in a way it's kind of the same woman in different periods of her life, right? So it just felt more cohesive emotionally to keep it the three of them. Whereas in this, again, it's so much about her that double kind of element of her idealized self and the self that she is and what she's trying to leave behind. And of course the dad is, present, but he is kind of almost ghost-like in his presence for most of the film. He's kind of haunting the hallways. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's come up a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. There's enough films about men. It's fine.
Exactly. No, we found it lovely.
Awesome.
Agreed. So after people walk out of Saccharine, what's the conversation? I will get it right. What's the conversation you hope they're having in the car and the ride home afterwards?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I see it as an optimistic film. And for me, a lot of it is so much about, how do you arrive at self-love? How do you have compassion for yourself? And I think it's something that we talk about a lot in, just generally, and even more nowadays with, mental health conversations. But it's something that always eluded me. I was I don't really understand what that's about. How do you do that? And I think through the process of recovery, it's it's just looking at a previous version of yourself and just having empathy and compassion for that, and for what that person was going through. So that's really what that, garbage chute moment at the end for Hannah means to me. And I think, as it ends, I hope that people can look at that as like, there's a way out, like no matter how much you feel trapped by these walls you've built around yourself, and no matter how isolated you feel, connection and compassion there's always going to be a way out of that. Yeah.
It's definitely what I took out of it, because it's funny, over the last few weeks before I even knew this movie was coming out, I've been going through that whole, like, I haven't lost enough weight. How much more can I lose? Why aren't I losing this? I've been doing a lot of that thinking. So this really helped with that kind of thoughts. So, yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah. And it's funny how much that's just like it's just like a neurological pathway, right? And no matter how much work you think you've done, you can kind of slip back into that kind of loop. But yeah, I think it was super important to me to I guess my view of the world isn't nihilistic, and I don't want to like project that at all. So it's hopefully hopeful to people.
No, it's a beautiful conversation starter.
My unexpected takeaway from this film is that I want to actually now make sure I donate my body to science. So,
Yeah, that's such a good call, actually, like the body and its inherent worth, right? And so beautiful that they actually do these memorial services at universities where they invite the families, and there's a real respect that's shown to the donors, which is great.
Agree completely. That was amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
for letting us watch your movie and be embodied in it, Natalie, like in more than one way.
Maybe too much.
Never too much, never too much. And we really enjoy watching it. Well, I did.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. That's so nice.